Adam, nobody knows what the hell is going on with Conor McGregor. He's fighting. He's not fighting. There's doubt. There's doom and gloom. Everything's good. Everything's bad. I don't know what's going on. How are you? Happy Wednesday to you.
Happy Wednesday. And yeah, seems like nobody knows what's going on except for Ariel, hey?
Yeah, Ariel Helwani is the only one who apparently is he's like got the whole MMA media at his fingertips right now. This is the Fight SZN Podcast. It's me, Jesse Rowe, joined by Adam Fishkin. Yeah, let's jump into it. We talked about this last week. There was uncertainty and doubt because the press conference had been canceled. The Dublin press conference had been canceled. And then there were all the speculation about that UFC had pulled the pre-orders from the pay-per-view. That sort of got debunked. Then they re-uploaded free fights on YouTube. They posted an actual ad for the fight on YouTube promoting the fight. It seemed like all systems were a go. You made a TikTok about it. We were fired up. We were excited. Ariel Helwani himself said there had never been more optimism. He goes on his show, gets everybody. He's doing all this view harvesting and engagement farming, where he's getting everybody going to his show to say, "Hey, it's never been more optimistic." And then this morning, he goes on a show and says, "It's never been more pessimistic. The fight's in limbo. The UFC is actively looking for replacements." I don't know what's going on. I have an idea of what's going on. I'm curious what you think is going on.
Oh, that's a great question. I think that I think the fight's likely still on. I think not that he's engagement farming like you said, but I think
I know I was joking.
Yeah. No, we won't talk too much shit about Ariel because we do like Ariel. But what I think is happening is I think Ariel's got a direct connection to Conor's camp. I think he is hearing these things from Conor's camp, but we haven't heard anything from like Michael Chandler's end. Now.
Well,
Yeah,
he went on an interview and said the fight's on. He's acted like all this. He was training with Gilbert Burns, who on another podcast said that as far as he knows, the fight's on.
Yeah. Now, yeah, it's an interesting situation. I think it's when Conor fights, it's Conor McGregor month. You know,
Yeah,
he wants to be in the news all of June, which, all fairness to him, I think he's trying to sell the fight more, and I think this sells the fight really well. Right. The more we talk about it, the more we're excited for June 29th. And the closer we get to the date, the more the higher the likelihood that the fight will actually happen. Right. So I think it's still on though.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting about what kind of promotional tool this would serve to cast doubt over the fight. It's either a promotional tool. Let's assume for a second that the fight is on. This is strategic in some way, right? Like you said, Ariel and Conor go way back. I think Conor's been going on Ariel's show or has been talking to Ariel since like 2014. So like they've known each other for a very long time. We know that the UFC and Ariel Helwani have a very, cloudy relationship, to say the least. They've had some history. Ariel is the only one casting any doubt on this fight. I mean, if not for what he's been saying on his show, we wouldn't be where we are right now talking about it, because I haven't seen any of the other MMA reporters reporting anything of this sort, other than what could have possibly canceled the press conference.
Yeah.
There's been nothing about whether the fight's in jeopardy or in limbo. My sense of it, my guess, if I were to guess, is that Conor and his camp are getting messages out to Ariel, and Ariel's doing his job. He's reporting what they're telling him. But the question is, are Conor and his camp using Ariel to sort of manipulate the narratives a little bit to maybe accomplish a few different things? Maybe Conor wants more money. He's trying to milk every last dime that he can out of the UFC to scare them into maybe upping those zeros, a couple more zeros to the end of his paycheck. Maybe he's trying to get in Michael Chandler's head a little bit. Maybe he's just having some fun. Maybe there is something going on.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'm with you, and I think that the fight is going to happen because of the fact that the UFC hasn't given any indication that the fight is off other than canceling the press conference. They have not said a word. until Dana White makes that video where he says our new main event is so and so, Conor McGregor is out with a knee injury or something like that, then it's all speculation, right? But I'm with
Totally.
you. I think the fight's on. But man, if he's just using Ariel to get in our heads, then I think we just need to like turn our internet off for the next couple of
Yeah.
weeks. It's probably going to happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a promotional tool. And I also think it is like a mental warfare tool for Conor to deal with Chandler. But at the same time, let's say the fight was off. I wouldn't be surprised if the UFC wouldn't say anything about it because it already has the highest gate. They don't want definitely don't want to issue any refunds. That's for sure. I don't know if they'd be legally liable to do so. I don't think so necessarily, as long as
No.
the event is still on. But yeah, but if it was canceled, the UFC would wait till they have all their ducks in a row to say anything. Like I don't think I don't think the UFC would put any doubt in our mind unless they're announcing another main event. So it's kind of like two things that it makes sense that they haven't said anything, but at the same time, maybe there's nothing to say and Conor is using it for whatever he wants to use it for.
Yeah, well, I will say I do think that it's I think that you have to I think I mentioned this on last podcast. I think that you have to issue refunds if you've advertised a fight for pay-per-view for like pre-order. Again, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do think that's the case. But yeah, they wouldn't refund the gate. It's possible that Ariel is is enjoying this a little bit. I would be too. Here's the thing about Conor. Who else in the MMA world has that sort of power to use the media in this sort of way? If that's what it is, if this is strategic, who else could do it this way? There's literally only one guy in the UFC that could even have anything close to this sort of power, and it's Conor. He's the only one.
It's because people care about Conor. Everybody can use the media. Everybody can leak rumors to Ariel and he'd talk about them. But we care because it's Conor and we want to see Conor come back and fight again. Right? Which is classic Conor.
Yeah, no, this has happened before with Conor. There was the Nate Diaz fight, I believe. That fight was moved cities. If something happened in that fight, I'm just not remembering correctly. But there's always been drama around Conor McGregor fight weeks where there's been uncertainty, there has been doubt casted on it. Not to this extent, not in this way, but there's always been something along the lines of uncertainty and drama surrounding his fights. I think you can safely assume that the fight is on until the UFC says something, because at a certain point, it's like you're kind of just playing into their hands a little bit.
I agree. No, I think the fight's still on. But on a similar note, or almost the exact opposite, this fight, drama leading up to the fight. On the other hand, we have all this post drama of a fight that happened 2 months ago, and all of a sudden, we can't stop talking about it. Alex Pereira versus Jamahal Hill. The beef just gets juicier. I put out a TikTok last week that did pretty well, talking about the beef that they had going on, and then there was a fan edit where somebody edited
the N-word
comment. Pereira comment Chama.
You reap what you sow. Right.
Yeah, which is just calm in Portuguese, I believe. Could be wrong on that one, but
I think it's let's go.
Oh, is it let's go?
Yeah. Chama means let's go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I know in Spanish it's calma. So
okay, interesting. No, that's why he just says Shama all the time. He's just like Shama. Let's go.
Yeah. So but a fan edited to say the N-word. And Poetan reposted onto the story. And then from there, the beef just kind of kept going. Jamahal Hill basically said, like, he reposted Pereira's knockout, or when Pereira was knocked out versus Izzy, saying, at least I wasn't knocked out in this fashion. It's like, dude, at the end of the day, you got knocked out.
Yeah, so that was
actually last round with this guy. Like, you can't talk that much crap about him,
I know. And after also beating Izzy, that was also a rematch of where he had already beaten Izzy. So that was like the 7th round of fighting Izzy before he got knocked out. I want to get back to that, but that post by Jamahal Hill of the photo of Pereira was actually a response to an interview that Pereira did, where he was asked about Jamal's criticism of celebrating the knockout the way that he did and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Pereira basically was like, I don't know why he's still talking about this. Maybe he just woke up from the knockout.
I
And
know. I
so
love it.
that's why Jamahal Hill was like,
Yeah.
well, at least I wasn't totally unconscious like you were, which is, I mentioned in a previous video, that's a pretty tough sell when you're trying to
Yeah.
get people on your side of like the smack talking arena. Like, hey, at least I wasn't totally
Yeah.
unconscious. He would have been knocked unconscious had the ref not intervened. Like, let's be real. Like, that would have happened. So,
Yeah. Look, I'm a Jamahal Hill fan. I'm a Poatan fan. I'm very good at being able to see other people's perspectives. And when Jamahal Hill first came out saying, "Hey, look, it was a confusing moment. It was kind of not unfair, but it was just confusing, unfortunate how it happened." I agreed with that. Although he threw the first punch after like the everything kind of went down, I still felt for Jamahal Hill. Um, but at the same time, it's like, dude, you just got to know when to kind of like back off a little bit and just call it. There was no. I think he did worse off for himself and for his fan base by posting that picture of Poatan being knocked out. Um,
so I,
yeah,
I disagree with you. I know what
interesting.
you're saying. I think that he looks foolish when he's saying this, right? Like when he's
Yeah,
saying like, oh, at least I wasn't totally knocked out. Like, again, tough sell. It's like bragging over whether you got knocked out totally versus knocked out partially is like, it's a fine line in this game. Again, if Herb Dean doesn't stop the fight, he would have been knocked out totally, because then he just would have kept hitting him on the ground until he was out. But I actually think that what Jamahal Hill is doing is kind of smart. I don't think he's stupid. I think he knows that he has to create. He wants the rematch. He wants another chance. First time fighting in over a year after tearing his Achilles. He gets in there and he loses in 2 minutes. It's like, that's got to be hard. So he's trying to get his way back to that fight. I think he's trying to actually create a storyline. And if you're doing that, you actually make the fight more interesting. If the UFC decides they want to do a rematch, it's actually more interesting because what do we always say about people, about fighters? You pay to watch them knock somebody out and you pay to watch them get knocked out. And Jamahal Hill knows that all the MMA fans are hating on him right now and they're clowning him and that he looks like a fool. I think he's smart enough to know that. And I
yeah,
think he's trying to like create a story here. And I think it's smart. I'm way more interested in them doing a rematch now than I ever would have been. Even though I still think Jamahal is 1 or 2 fights away from getting there,
yeah,
it's still interesting to me because he won't stop talking about it. And because he won't stop talking about it, it's going to be on the internet for us to digest and talk about.
yeah. No, I agree with you from that perspective. He's doing a great job marketing himself. We always shit talk fighters for not being marketable, and Jamahal Hill is doing just that. He's doing what he's supposed to
Yeah,
do. I guess my beef with him is like I think he could have taken it another route as opposed to posting
sure.
a Poatan being knocked out,
Yeah,
and then it would have continued the beef because at this point it's kind of over. He didn't. There was no like there was no follow up for Poatan because
right.
Poatan just goes, dude, I won this because of you.
Yeah, it's kind of like he
Like,
just lets the fan do his bidding for him now.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
Poatan has no reason to reply. Where before, if he maybe went a different route about it, maybe he could have triggered Alex in another way to get a response out of him and continue this beef. But where we're at now, like I think we're at a stalemate, and I don't think it's gonna move forward anywhere.
Agreed. Really quick, let's just do a couple minutes on this. Just a huge news broke last night. Uh, so the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight has been moved to November. So as far as I was concerned, that fight was like that July 20th Netflix card was being moved into November until Happy Punch puts out a story last night that Jake Paul is fighting Mike Perry in the boxing ring, and it's going to be on July 20th, the original date. So we're still going to have Darren Till versus Cesar Chavez Jr., I think is who he's fighting. And
Mm-hmm.
we're still going to have Amanda Serrano, I believe, is fighting. So we're still going to have that card, just not Mike Tyson on that card. So
Yeah.
what did you think when you heard Jake Paul versus Mike Perry?
I love it. Oh my, I'm so excited for it. I'll, Mike Tyson, legend, obviously, but he is what 50, 57.
Yeah, going to be 58 by the time they fight.
I am so much more excited for this fight. This is going to
Yeah.
be like an actual like brawl that we want to see. Mike Perry's obviously been in bare knuckle boxing for the past little while. I think he's 5-0 in bare knuckle, maybe 6-0 at this point.
Yeah.
And Yeah, like, it's the exact type of fighter that we want to see up against Jake Paul. It's someone who has that knockout power, someone we've seen it done it before. He's still maybe not like a legend, but he's still very well respected. Um, I think it's a great fight. They're similar builds, they're similar styles. I think it's going to be so fun to watch.
Yeah, I think that it's like probably the toughest guy Jake's ever fought in terms of like the true dog that he's fought. Like he's obviously fought Nate Diaz, who's a dog. But like Mike Perry is like in his prime, where I think Nate is definitely like towards the end of his prime.
Mhm.
Mike Perry smack dab in the middle of it. And he's
Yeah,
a good boxer. He's a very, very good boxer. Great bare knuckle boxer. Jake is bigger than him. I've noticed some comments on our posts on in our YouTube community and in our on our Instagram posts that and on TikTok. A lot of people think that Jake is a lot bigger because Jake was bulking up to fight at like 225 or 235 for the Tyson fight, whereas Perry normally fights at 185. So I do think Jake will have a size advantage. And I do think Mike Perry leaves himself open a lot to get hit. So there's a Mike Perry could easily get knocked out in this fight, no question about it. But I think it's a real test for Jake Paul. I think he's going to get hit more than he's ever been hit before in a fight and with more power than he's ever been hit before because Mike Perry puts everything into it. It's going to be a brawl. I'm so excited for it. I think Perry has a good chance of winning. But more than anything, I'm just happy for Mike Perry. This dude went from being like a UFC kind of like journeyman, just like
yeah.
not figuring out, getting beat up by Daniel Rodriguez, having to leave the organization and reinventing himself with BKFC, becoming their biggest star, their highest paid star. And now he's boxing Jake Paul. What
Yeah.
an unbelievable turnaround for Mike Perry. That is awesome. That dude totally reinvented his career. He's a superstar now, and he's going to get a massive payday. And I could not be more happy for the guy.
It's the comeback story we love to see, right?
Yeah.
And I'll quickly touch on, you mentioned Nate Diaz fighting Jake Paul, right? Mike is a striker. Sure, he comes from MMA, but he's got the boxing background that we wanted to see for Jake Paul. Nate didn't really have that, right? Um, so no, I just think it's gonna be such a great fight. It's gonna be a great event. And it kind of lines up that if this fight goes Jake's way, and let's say Jake ends it early, he can still, in theory, make that November date to fight Mike Tyson if he's good to go by then. So that's one of the first things that I noticed, and that's one of the things that actually got me even more excited for this Mike Perry fight.
Yeah. As long as he's not knocked out cold or something like that, I think it's probably still going to happen. But, me personally, I hope that the Tyson fight doesn't happen anyway. Just to be
Yeah,
honest, I'm kind of hoping that I'm
yeah,
hoping that fight doesn't happen. Let me just put it that way. But I
I
agree.
agree.
I at least it gives Tyson some time. And yeah, man,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Who you got, by the way? Who would you take winning before we move on?
I think I'm gonna get hate for this, but as much as I'd love to see Mike Perry win because it's part of that comeback story, I'm a like Jake Paul is just in the beginning. I'd
Yeah.
like to see Jake win for the sole reason that it takes him to that next level. Hopefully, he fights some bigger names, and hopefully, we get some more of these super fights. Because if he loses, it kind of restarts. And where does Mike go from here? The story ends for Mike, right? So I'd rather see the
Yeah.
story continue going. What about you?
I think Jake will probably get it done too. But I think it's a real test. It'll be close.
Hell yeah,
My first gut instinct is Jake. Really
yeah,
quick, I want to get onto this because this was a hot topic over the weekend. We're just getting a chance to talk about it. Jared Cannonier had a tough loss. He got the fight was stopped early against Imavov, Nassourdine Imavov, who got the win. Cannonier was wobbled on his feet. Imavov was on the prowl. There's a chance he was going to finish him there, but Jason Herzog called the fight very early. It was very premature, clearly an early stoppage. Felt a little bad for Cannonier, who's 40 years old. That might have been his last shot at a title. What did you think of that?
Oh, it's a terrible ending, dude. It's a terrible
Yeah,
ending. And I like to preface this by saying that a lot of the MMA community feels for Jason Herzog because a lot of them agree that he's one of the better referees in the UFC. But it's a really bad stoppage, which is interesting because there was the fight with Wei Li Zhang a little while ago where he was also refereeing that fight. She had her opponent basically choked out cold at the end of the first
Right.
round. And Jason just let it keep going because the round ended. Didn't notice that she was out cold. The fight kept going, and then she got battered in the second round. The fight kept going, and then I think ultimately it went to decision in the end where Weili won. But yeah, just a couple bad calls. So it's interesting to see him let a fight go, but then at the same time stop one so prematurely. But anyway, you got to feel for Cannonier. It's a terrible. It might be his career ender. You don't know. We don't know if he's gonna continue fighting. We don't know if he's gonna want to restart his journey to the top. You know what I'd love to see the UFC do is say, you know what, you've been like done like we've done you poorly here. We don't want you to see you go out like this. We will let you fight another top contender that could set you up for a title fight potentially. That's what I would like to see happen. I don't think it will happen for Cannonier to get to that title contention. He probably needs to get another 2 wins under his belt before they allow that. But I'd love to see it like just like a one fight get him to the top if he wins, just to kind of let him end his career that way. But as we were talking, that division is stacked. There's a lot of people lining up for a title fight.
You're going to be a year away, man, because like Hamzat would be next, and then Izzy is going to fight DDP. It's going to be a few fights away is the problem.
Yeah. Like, it's a tough one. Like almost like it's tough because at the same time, Imavov also deserves one of those title contention fights, right? Like you'd assume that after Hamzat and Whitaker, you'd assume that one of them goes to the title fight next, but there might be one other fight before that where they put him for like a contender fight. And you'd assume it'd be against Imavov, but it'd be cool to see it against Cannonier as well. It's a tough one. But yeah, can you think of any other robberies in the UFC? I can't seem to like wrap my mind on one, but there's got to be other ones.
Like who has been the top robberies of all time?
Like the top UFC robberies of all time.
Well, this is a bad one. I don't think it's like one of the worst. I mean, here's the thing: like a lot of them in my mind are going to be very specific to like when I was annoyed by something because it was like a big fight. I actually thought that the first Izzy Pereira fight was stopped prematurely when it's not one of the worst robberies of all time. But I thought like when the stakes were there, Izzy was winning the fight, and he had just taken a couple of hits from Pereira. He was still standing. He was still trying to defend himself. He was doing some weird thing with his head, and Mark Goddard called it early. I thought that was premature. I thought they could have let Pereira hit him 1 or 2 more times because it was stopped after Pereira missed a punch, which was what was interesting. The one that always comes to mind for me, even though it's not one of the worst, I just think it's like the funniest stoppages of all time, is when Ion Cutelaba was fighting, God, what's his name? The light heavyweight that's fighting, oh my God, bro. He fought Blachowicz for the title recently, and I'm blanking on his name right now. I'm sorry. But Ion Cutelaba was fighting, and he started faking like he was hurt. He was playing possum, and the referee didn't realize it, and he's acting like he's hurt, and then the referee calls it, and he was like, pissed off because he was clearly faking it. That was one of the worst stoppages, but they ended up doing the rematch anyway, and then he got smoked either way, so it didn't really matter in the end.
Do you think this deserves a rematch? I guess on that note. Because, let me preface this. Does Cannonier versus Imavov deserve a rematch? Because on the judges' scorecards, Cannonier was going up into the 4th round, up 2-1. You'd assume that if the 4th round continued to go the way it would go, it'd be 2-2, and then Cannonier going into the 5th round, being a vet, typically winning those 5th rounds. Good chance he would have won the fight on decision. So is it worth a rematch?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd really want to see that fight again, to be honest. It sucks because Cannonier is probably winning the first 2 rounds. I think there's a good argument for it, sure. But if I'm being honest, like I think we can move on. I think we give you Imavov. I think Imavov should fight somebody at UFC Paris. Like you get a big fight at UFC Paris. He should fight as like the co-main or something there. And I think that would be, I don't know, maybe you could do a rematch at UFC Paris. I think that's what Cannonier was calling for. That would be fine. But I think, honestly, I'd probably rather see him against somebody like Brendan Allen or something like that. Something like a title eliminator. Probably would be the way to go. So, God, I'm blanking on the guy's name, and he's like the 3rd best light heavyweight in the UFC. I need to drink some coffee or something. But anyways, yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Imavov versus Vittori could also be a fun one as well. I don't know if
Yeah.
Vittori's got something lined up, but that
He
could
was
be fun
supposed
to
to
watch.
fight Brendan Allen, but that fight got that fight Magomed Ankalaev. That's who I was thinking of. Sorry. It was like
Ah,
bothering me. I think Vittori was supposed to fight Brendan Allen, but that got called off. I don't know if he's scheduled for a fight. I don't mind that. Vittori
yeah.
versus Imavov.
Cannonier versus Paulo Costa.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them. They're both coming off losses. They're both kind of need a redemption.
There you
It'll be
go.
good.
I
There we
like it.
go.
I like it.
Campbell, I'm coming
Anyways,
for your job.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, yeah. Speaking of matchmaking, you're doing all the UFC matchmaking. Just I've been watching Fight Inc. By the way,
Mhm.
nobody's coming for that guy's job, for Hunter Campbell's job or Sean Shelby. Those guys are so good at what they do. That
Incredible.
show, I'm convinced that show is just there to like make them look good, because
Yeah.
it's like a lot of UFC fans, they love to hate on the UFC and matchmaking and stuff like that. Like, oh, fans can always do it better. And then you see how these guys do it. I think that's why they put the show out there. They want to be like, hey, you think you could do it better than these guys? And I'm like watching, I'm like, damn, these guys are real good at
Yeah.
this. They're real good
Yeah.
at this. So,
There's some great clips coming out of that show as well. We can save that for another time, but
yeah.
I,
Yeah. What's your favorite part so far of Fight Inc? What's been your favorite part?
I can't think of on the top of my head. You put me on the spot here.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
loved that the PR team had a meeting about Sean Strickland. I thought that was so funny.
So funny.
Yeah,
So
like
funny.
just sitting there, they're like, and then the guy has to tell Lene Breckenridge, I think is her name, the head of
Yeah.
communications at the UFC, like. So Sean Strickland did his interview, and he had a lot of things to say about women and them not being allowed to vote, and just like the two women sitting there,
Like,
just
a
yeah,
nightmare for PR.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
but
but that's a note that every company in the world needs to do things like this. People love
yeah,
seeing the behind the scenes stuff. It's incredible. We don't get to see it. It's like such a mystery to the average fan. Other leagues need to take a note. And the UFC has done it over and over again. They've proven why they're the top when it comes to media out of all the big leagues.
yep. To their credit, the women in the room handled it very well. But it's time to move on because we've got our special guest for this week's episode. We've got UFC top prospect Austin Bashi, who's going to be fighting on Dana White's Contender Series. Adam, he's the number one ranked UFC prospect in the United States, according to some metrics. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I read. I read it on an article, so I'll put the link in there. But he's one of the top prospects in the United States, and he's been on the radar for a couple of years. But he finally believes that he has what it takes to be a UFC champion. He's only 22 years old, and he's going to be competing for a spot in the UFC in September. So take a look. Yep. Take a look at our interview with Austin Bashi. We're joined by Austin Bashi. Austin, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Doing good, man. Thank you. How about yourself?
Doing very well. So people who don't know, Austin, you're considered probably the top UFC prospect in the United States right now. And we have I'm going to give some background because we have some exciting news that you just shared on your Instagram the other day. But just to give some background, you started your career in Extreme Fighting Championship, became the two-time bantamweight champ in Lights Out Fighting. Now, pleased to say that you are going to be on Dana White's Contender Series on September 3rd. Just sort of give us your reaction to that and how excited you are.
I'm very excited. This is kind of what I've been working for my whole entire life. And finally now after 12 fights, I'm happy to be getting this opportunity. Since I was a kid, it was always a goal and dream of mine to be a UFC champion, and feel like it all starts now.
Yeah. UFC's had its eye on you for a while, from my understanding. Now you wanted to, were you trying to bypass the Contender Series? Were you hoping to just go straight into it? Or is this something that is this an avenue that you wanted to take to prove yourself?
Obviously, it would be pretty nice to kind of just get straight into the UFC, but doesn't matter. I'm excited for Contender Series as well. My main thing was I just wanted a lot of experience in the regional scene and fight all these tough guys. So that way, when I am in the UFC or the Contender Series, I've seen it all already. So that was my main thing, getting good experience and making sure I have tough fights before I even join the league.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, because I know that you kind of wanted to like grind it out and cut your teeth a little bit on the regional scene. Why is it now? You're 22 years old. Why is now the right time for you to go into the UFC as opposed to 2 years ago when people started to take notice of you?
Right. Now I feel like I was still young 2 years ago. I was only 20, which I am still very young right now. I'm only 22, but I fought some tough guys and kind of gave me a real good look at where I was and feel like I could compete with the best in the world right now. And my thing was, if I didn't feel like I could be a champion right now, I'm not going to take this opportunity. But at this place I am right now, I really do feel like I could be a UFC champion.
I mean, so how long do you think that would take you? Because I mean, we obviously have like Raul Rosas Jr.'s in the UFC right now. He went to the Dana White Contender Series at 17 years old. He's 19. He's fighting this weekend. He's had a little bit of an up and down start, coming off of a win. Just in terms of like age, because age is such a factor in MMA, right? Like most UFC fighters, they don't get into the sport until their late 20s, oftentimes, sometimes early 30s. What is it about you that you think that you have what it takes to compete at the highest level in the UFC at such a young age?
I feel like it's really comes down to just my work ethic, my discipline, and the grind I have. I'm at it every single day, 8 to 10 hours a day. And it's not that I just go hard when I'm in camp. I'm going all year round, and I'm not really doing all this other partying stuff that other people are doing. This is literally all I do every single day, and I feel like I have what it takes to just compete with the best and be a world champion.
Do you, at that age, you mentioned partying. I mean, I was partying a little bit, but I was also, you want to hang out with your friends when you're 22 years old. There's a lot of distractions. Have you found it that you have to hang out with your friends less? Are you still able to keep a small circle? Like, what is it that you're doing to sort of limit the distractions in your life right now?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Feel like they have to have people feel like they have to have a life outside of fighting, but for me, really just all fighting. And when I do have a little free time, I'm with my family and my close friends, the people that I could keep tight with me in a tight circle. But I don't really hang out with too many people outside of the gym.
What do you like to do in your free time? Do you like to go see movies? Do you do you go to the bowling alley? Like, what do you like to do in your
Uh,
free time?
my free time, I love to eat, man. I love
Yeah.
going to restaurants.
Okay. Nice. Nice. What's your favorite restaurant type of food?
They're steakhouses.
Nice. That's the way to go. Um, Sorry, I had okay. So there's some confusion here. Are you going to be fighting at bantamweight or featherweight? What weight class are you going to be fighting at?
So yeah, I made the move up to featherweight.
Okay.
And that was another thing about me being young. When I was young, it was a little bit easier to make 35. As I grew, as I got older, I put on a lot of muscle, put on a lot of mass, and those last 5, 6 fights at 35 were pretty tough to make that way. So me and my coaches made the decision to move up to 45, and it was a lot better cut. This one, I wasn't so drained going into the fight. I felt a lot better.
Eating at all those steakhouses too, probably put on a little little muscle on.
Probably that did something with it.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on when people bring up people like Sage Northcutt, who were rushed to the UFC early? Obviously, he was very young when he was rushed in, and they felt like he just wasn't ready. And now he's obviously revitalized his career and won championship. But what are your thoughts when you hear people saying that? Do you feel like everybody's a little bit different, or do you feel like there's good reason for that sort of criticism? What are your thoughts on that?
Everyone is different, yeah. And that was the thing for me when I was like 5-0, 6-0, or even like 7-0. People were always telling me like, "You got to go to the UFC, got to go to the UFC." But I knew I wasn't ready at that time, and that's why I had another 5 fights in me because I wanted to make sure I had that experience going into this. And
Yeah.
I feel like some people are just rushed. Some people are so focused on just getting there, but they can't stay there. For me, it's about getting there, staying there, and being the best.
What are your thoughts on Raul Rosas Jr.? He's 19 years old. Is that, obviously he's a bantamweight, you'd be at featherweight. Is that something that you'd be interested in to prove who's like the best young fighter in the UFC when you get there?
Yeah, for sure. He's it's pretty sweet seeing him at a young age in the UFC, and it would be nice to show them. Yep.
I know that you're older than him, but like, did that inspire you in any way when he was so young? Did that like make you feel like, okay, if he can do it, I can too?
I don't really try to compare myself to no one. You
Okay.
know, everyone kind of has their own little path, but
Yeah,
no, didn't really look at it that way.
I love that. What are your thoughts on the featherweight division right now, since that's the division you're going to be competing in? Ilya Topuria is the champion. He knocked out Alexander Volkanovski. What are your thoughts at the state of featherweight? Do you think that they should do Holloway versus Topuria? Like, just give me your overall take on it.
That featherweight division is pretty stacked, you know, especially with Max Holloway winning that last fight like that. I do like that fight, Ilya versus Max.
Who do you got in that fight if they do square up?
I got Ilya on that one.
Yeah, Ilya.
Yeah,
And Max Holloway, he's the hot ticket right now. Everybody loves Max Holloway after that knockout. So, you know, a lot of people think that he would give Ilya a hard time.
for sure. Yeah.
How do you feel like you stack up against those guys? I know it's very early. It's obviously not totally fair because you're probably going to be 4 or 5 fights away. But how do you feel like you would stack up if you were to climb the ranks and get up there into a ranked fight for a title?
Yeah, that's so like you're saying, I don't even have a UFC fight yet.
Yeah.
So I can't really compare myself right now to those guys. As I get through those ranks and keep fighting tougher competition, and moving up those ranks, that's when I'll start comparing myself to those guys. But those guys are pretty experienced in the UFC right now, so can't be comparing myself to them just yet.
Fair enough. Is there a dream fight that you have? Like, is there somebody that like is, you're a young guy. You've got to think about these moments. Is there a dream fight that you've thought about all your life that you really want?
You know, it was honestly anyone in that top. Before it was bantamweight, and
Right.
Sean O'Malley was for sure one of them. And to be fighting his teammate is pretty excited about that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so I guess this is what I would ask you out. Let's end it here. Where do you're obviously fighting at the Contender Series on September 3rd. Where do you want to see yourself 1 year from today?
1 year today, I want to see myself in that top 15 rank in the UFC.
Right? You think you could get there in 1 year?
Think I could, you know. I like being pretty active, so getting about 3-4 fights a year is ideal, and I feel like with 3 good fights in the UFC, you could place yourself up there.
Yeah, so you're obviously wrestling. How's your striking coming along, by the way? Because I know that you've been really working on that. How's that going?
Striking is going good. I've been honestly working my striking and grappling the same amount of time. Been doing that for 14 years. I just haven't showed my striking yet in these fights. It's because I don't really need to right now.
Yeah.
But once someone could stop the wrestling a lot, that's when you'll really start seeing my striking. People probably don't think I have striking because I haven't used it yet, but once I need to use it, everyone will start knowing about it.
Love that, man. Well, I'm super excited. September 3rd, Dana White's Contender Series. I'd like to catch up with you again the closer you get. But for the next few months, good luck. And yeah, man, I'll be rooting for you, okay?
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.